Mi nombre es soy rango diamante en Nikken. Empecé este negocio hace 6 años. El 22 de septiembre voy a cumplir 6 años que me inscribí a Nikken. Y me inscribí sin saber qué esperar. No creía yo en las redes de mercadeo, no creía en los productos mágicos que te mejoran la salud. Yo soy analítica, soy escéptica, estudié administración de empresas y lo mío son los números. Entonces todo lo que hablaban en Nikken me parecía totalmente extraño y ajeno, no sabía ni qué era el pH del cuerpo. Entonces poco a poco fui aprendiendo sobre los productos, sobre la empresa, sobre la industria, y cada vez me fui enamorando más del negocio y de lo que es Nikken. Así es que me he vuelto una apasionada por compartir este negocio, por compartir lo que hacemos, y estamos aquí hoy en especial porque tenemos el privilegio de tener a Mikey Mucho en México. Mikey Mucho es diamante real, está en el Club de Millonarios de Nikken. Es una persona que empezó el negocio hace más de 20 años, 25 años, ¿verdad, Mike? 25 años que empezó el negocio, abriendo Nikken en Canadá, y fue la primera persona que vino a abrir mercado en México. Y así es como ha desarrollado a lo largo de 25 años una extraordinaria red en México, en Latinoamérica y en muchos países del mundo. Michael nos va a hablar sobre el negocio. No vamos a hablar nada del producto. Quien tenga inquietudes sobre los productos, al final del evento se puede acercar con la persona que viene. Vamos a hablar del negocio, de las tendencias de los negocios en el futuro, de cómo ha venido desarrollándose los negocios a través del tiempo. Es una plática que a mí me parece muy interesante, porque sobre todo nos explica por qué Nikken es la opción, por qué Nikken en el futuro y en los años que vienen va a tener un auge como industria, como empresa. Entonces ser parte de este proyecto es una muy buena decisión. Mike, además de todo, tengo el privilegio de que sea mi mentor y he aprendido muchísimo de él. Así es que gracias por estar aquí. Les pido que lo recibamos con un muy fuerte aplauso, porque siempre está para ayudarnos, para aprender de él, y ojalá todos desarrollemos el negocio que él ha hecho a través de tantos años. Entonces, Mike, bienvenido a México. Esta presentación es parte de un tour que Mike le llama el Active Wellness Tour. Es un tour que lleva haciendo durante todo 2017. Tomó la decisión de ir a todos los lugares del mundo y how often are you traveling? Every 2 weeks? A veces cada 2 semanas emprende un viaje diferente a las diferentes partes del mundo para visitarnos y ayudarnos a crecer nuestros negocios. Y este tour lo empezó en 2017, en enero, ya estamos en septiembre y tenemos el privilegio de que en México esta es la segunda vez que lo tenemos en este tour. Así es que muchas gracias, Mike. Gracias.
Okay, hi. Buenos días. It's always a pleasure and a privilege for me to speak to an audience, first of all, and to be able to share some of the things that I've learned in the years that I've been as an entrepreneur, working for myself and traveling the world. I've been all over the world. And earlier this year, actually, just before the beginning of this year, I had knowledge of some of the changes that our company that we work with, our partner, Nikken, was going to be making. And these were very significant changes, very significant, almost as significant as when I was first introduced to this 25 and a half years ago. And so I felt like I did 25 and a half years ago. I felt excited and I felt compelled. Does that word translate, compelled? Like I had to do this. Something in my blood said, you've got to get out there and you've got to tell them. And what I felt like, what I wanted everyone to know was that there was really an opportunity to partner with this company at this time and make a very significant change in the health paradigm of the world. And when I speak the language of health, I want you to understand, I'm going to be talking about money today in a different way, but finances. Because I'm sure most of you will agree that most of the decisions people make in their life every single day on a daily basis are driven by their finances. And health, you'll find there's a correlation. The wealthier a person is, the more money they have, the healthier they are. And the longer is their life expectancy and their quality of life. Why do you think? Well, in this world, if you want to eat well, it costs money. If you want the best of things for your health and your family's health, tools like the Nikken technologies, it costs money. And most people are struggling with what? With money. And so what do they compromise? They compromise their health. And people will work even when they're not healthy because they have to make money. So health seems to be the first thing we sacrifice in order to have our finances. And finances is the primary objective of every working person. So the problem with this way of thinking, and this way of being, is that we have a society, and this is global, we have a society that's going down in terms of health. We may live a little bit longer, but we're not living healthier. It's almost as if the pharmaceutical industry wants us to live a little bit longer just so we can consume more of their drugs. And if I didn't know better, I would think there was a conspiracy against people to be sick. The objectives of the industry we entrust to keep us healthy is actually to make profit. And their profits are in direct proportion to our illness. Now tell me something. You're smart. Does it make sense to invest in your sickness? I have children. I have 3 kids. How many of you have children? Okay, so good. So when you think about your children, you think about having the best for them, wanting the best for them. And so you want to provide for them all the best solutions that there are that you can afford, right? That time can afford and that money can afford. So I want the same for my kids. I want them to grow up healthy, with a good attitude, and have access to the things that make life rewarding and enjoyable. Which, at the end of the day, means money. Some type of financial security, some type of financial freedom. But most importantly, I don't want them to become sick. Regardless of whether they have money, I want them to be healthy. But we now know that there is a relationship between health and money. A very strong relationship. So, when I was first introduced to this company and made a decision to become a partner in this crusade to educate and motivate the world to become proactive, which is why our word is active wellness, to be active, to participate in your health. Because if you don't, where do you end up? And I decided that I wanted to become someone who shared this information. Now, I did not think that this would become for me a profession or a career. I did not imagine I would be involved in this for 25 years. It's hard to imagine that 25 years has come and gone. There's a woman in here who showed me a photograph of me in 1993 when I was first here in Mexico, launching Nikken in Mexico. And look at that picture and I'm thinking, it's hard to imagine that's me 25 years, 24 years ago. It's incredible. Time does pass quick, yeah? You especially notice how fast time goes when you look at your children, right? Oh my God. I have a daughter, Savannah. She's my middle child who started university on Tuesday. I guess that was yesterday, right? That was her first day of university. I have another child, her sister's a year older. She's in her second year of university. And they're living together for the first time in an apartment in Toronto. Now, it takes money to make that happen. And I don't want that to be their problem. They need to focus on their studies. And so, again, the issue of money seems to be a part of every aspect of our life. And so if we're not going to talk about that, and in the context of health, then we're missing the big, there's a lot of good health products out there. Wouldn't you agree? There's really a lot of good health products. And Nikken has some of the finest products there are in the market to help us stay healthy, vibrant, capable of living a good quality life. But I'll tell you what Nikken's best product is. The best product that I've had from Nikken is freedom. The fact that I can even be here. And I can decide to be here anytime I want. I was thinking about it on the drive here. Oh my God, the drive. It took an hour, I don't know how long, an hour to drive 14 kilometers. It's crazy. But I know that in Toronto, it's the same. Traffic at rush hour is crazy. And I think about that. How many days a week, how many hours a day somebody spends just driving to get from point A to point B? Why? Because they don't have the freedom. I decide not to get into traffic, so I don't go anywhere during rush hour because I can decide to do that. I work from my home. Now, that kind of freedom, what's it worth? What's it worth to have freedom of choice? To choose to do what you want, to be with whoever you want, to travel when you want, to be able to provide people with experiences because you can. That kind of freedom is available to you. Now, most of us have not been taught how to attain it, but that freedom is attainable. And I can assure you that by being in partnership with Nikken and experiencing that level of freedom from very early on, I've been at this 25 and a half years, but most of my time in Nikken has been as a Royal Diamond. That's our highest rank in Nikken. And I've been a Royal Diamond since 1997. That's 20 years to have that kind of freedom. So if I came here to fly to Mexico, do you think we should have a conversation about our Jaime water? Do you think that would be a good conversation? No. You can get that information on your own, or you can get that from people here, and you can certainly get that information by using the products. So what I want to share with you is information that's important right now, that's happening in the world, that affects decisions that people are making, and why now more than ever, you have something to offer the world that's much more important than a product, like a tangible product. And that's why I decided to get on the road. I decided that I was going to start a movement in Nikken called the Active Wellness Tour and see if I had some partners out there that wanted to share this information. And I have to tell you, Veronica is a joy to work with. You know, she says she makes a big deal like I'm her mentor, but the truth of the matter is she makes mentoring her very easy. She's an incredibly bright and active individual, somebody who is always diligent, very detailed, and very persistent with her goals and her objectives. And what she wants is the best for you. So she puts these events together with her team to provide information and insight that you can take into your life and affect your home, your family, and the people you care about. I think that's an amazing public service that she does, even though it is a business context. So I want to give her a hand. So, let me tell you a little bit about what I've been talking about subtly. Our life is a trajectory. Every one of us are on a trajectory. You're either going in the direction you want to go, or you're going away from where you want to go. You're moving toward your goals and objectives, or you're moving away from them. And it's not something that happens by accident, it's actually something that happens by choice. It's the daily choices that we make that affect the habits that we form, and it's the habits that we form that show up in our life in terms of the results of our life. And I'm talking about results where our income is concerned, where our physical health is concerned, our relationships, our happiness, and whatever this means to you, success, your definition of success. It's the daily choices that become the habits that lead to the results in our life. So the question then becomes, what is the trajectory of your life? Now, I mentioned a little bit about health. I know that the world is in trouble concerning health. If you just look at how we have polluted this planet, you know that's true. Because even nature is in trouble with what we've done. There are species of animals that are becoming extinct just because of the level of pollution and toxins that we have in the world. They have discovered products that we've made under the ice cap in the North Pole. I mean, it's everywhere. And so this condition that we've created has put us on a trajectory. And even if you take care of things most of the time, the surrounding environment, you have to drive in this pollution, you have to eat the food that is made in this environment, etc. So we are constantly bombarding ourselves. Our body is constantly being burdened by unhealthy environment, unhealthy food, unhealthy air, unhealthy water. And so this trajectory that we're on naturally leads to illness, disease, which is on the rise. Again, if I was thinking about my children and the trajectory of their life, here they are born. They're born. What's their life going to become? Well, if I'm going to influence that, I need to be able to influence the choices they make, because that determines their behavior and that determines their results. So do I want a life of stress for my kids and myself, or do I want a life where they have options, freedom of choices? So the concept here is actually called compounding, because you don't get sick overnight. Sickness is something that happens over time because you've formed a habit of not doing the right things for your body, and with time that compounds and becomes illness. Well, you don't get wealthy overnight either. In fact, if you won the lottery, believe it or not, there's an 80% chance you're going to be more poor within 3 years of winning the lottery. How? How is that possible? Because the choices you make leads to your behavior and the habits that you form. And the habits that you form, if you don't have money, is to not have money. That's your habit. I have a habit of having money. And so things fall in my lap all the time. There's a biblical passage. It's kind of like this. It says, to them that have little, more will be taken. And to them that have much, more will be given. Why would that be? Why would there be a God in heaven that would take more from the people who have nothing and give more to the people who have everything? Well, the answer to that is very simple. There is no God in heaven that does that. That is simply a statement of a law called the law of attraction. A talk that I like to give. If you're in the habit of attracting wealth, you attract wealth. If you're in the habit of attracting poverty, it's called poverty consciousness, you attract poverty. So the question then is, what is the trajectory of your finances? Because that leads back to the habits and the choices that we've made growing up. Now, how many of you were born with the desire to be wealthy? How many of you, when you were young, you just, you want, like, yeah, you can see it, you can touch it, you can taste it. How many of you want to be happy? How many of you want to be happy in life? Okay? Yeah, that makes perfect sense. How about healthy? How many of you really want to stay healthy and feel healthy all your life, all the way to the end? Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Happy, healthy, and wealthy. Let me ask you a simple question. How popular is it to be happy, healthy, and wealthy? It's not very popular, is it? It's not very popular. How can something that we were born with, that's natural to us, the desire to have that, and yet after all of our life of experience, we're on a trajectory that leads to most people to being unhappy, 80% of the population, unhealthy, almost 80% of the population, and certainly not wealthy, that only is reserved for 1 to 3% of the population. Why? Why is it possible that we continue to perpetuate that way of being? There's a passage that says, the sins of the father are handed to the son. Right? What are the sins? The habits. The habits we form are passed on to the next generation, and they don't know any better. They just live their life. But their life is on a trajectory. When are we going to step back and look at this and analyze this and say, hold on a second here. Most people are not going in the direction that they want to go. We need to flip that. How do we move people in the right direction? And so that goes back to choices. We can begin today. This could be the beginning of a new trajectory. Today for you can be literally the beginning of a new trajectory. That day came for me December 1991. On December 1991, I put my name on a Nikken application form. Prior to that, I was a graduate of aerospace engineering. Ooh, that's important, huh? Well, while I had my degree in engineering, I ended up writing and producing and recording music under contract. I got a recording contract. Yes, rich and famous, here I come. 2 years later, that imploded because financially, the record label couldn't support their expansion plans. What did I end up doing now? I'm not an engineer, and I don't really want to be. I want to be a rock star. So, actually, the first goal, the only reason I went into aerospace is because I really wanted to be Captain Kirk. How many of you know that guy? Star Trek? I wanted to be Captain Kirk. So that was part of me. The other side of me wanted to be rich and famous like a musician, so I wanted to be like Michael Jackson, right? Anyway, neither of those things was happening. I ended up as an electrician working for a friend of mine in a small business, wiring buildings, homes, breathing dust all day long, drilling holes in wood beams so we could pass wires through. And that is not what you see in front of you now, but that is what I did. Only 2 years before that picture that I was in, that I showed you, that woman showed you earlier. So, what changed? What changed? I said yes. That's what changed. I said yes to a new trajectory. because the one that I was on was not going anywhere in the direction that I had imagined for my life. And at that time, I was 25, 26 years old. When I said yes, I was actually 27. 27 years old is when I said yes to a different direction in life. How many of you are 27, 30 years old here? Anyone? Again? In our mind? It's never too late. The past does not equal the future. That's what my mentor used to teach. It still does. Past does not equal the future. So the moment you make a yes decision about something, proactive, and to become active in new choices, new challenges, everything changes. You learn to have new habits that lead to things that can provide for you and your family what most people only dream about. And so here I am, 25 and a half years later, asking people to say yes to Nikken, because in 25 and a half years, I have not yet seen an opportunity that parallels this one. I've not seen an opportunity that allows people to experience an improvement in their quality of life in every one of these areas. Every one of them. Not some of them, every one of them. And that, I think, is a much better definition of success than just what you own, what you have. It's who are you being? Who have you become? And who are you being? Are you in the trajectory of creating healthier relationships? Are you in the trajectory of creating a healthier body? Are you on the trajectory of creating healthier finances and more freedom and choices? Is that the trajectory you're on? Because if that's the trajectory you're on a daily basis, that is a successful person. I've met a lot of people with a lot of money who've on their second or their third marriage, who've had a heart attack or two, have a stint or something going on. You know, money is not the solution. I was on a golf course where I lived in Barbados some years ago. And I'm going to just make it brief and get back to this presentation. This is a really interesting story. And when you live on a golf course and you want to play golf, you just go, and then they'll pair you up with somebody if you're alone. So they paired me with somebody that day who lived also on the golf course in Barbados. And so I said, I'm in here. He said he lives here. So we played out. And we passed my house, which is on the 10th hole, and nothing. I remember walking on the 16th hole, and as we were walking on the 16th hole, it occurred to me, we're almost done. Where exactly does this guy live? So I said, which of these is your house? Now, there's this one house in this property, which is a gated community, a very fancy place. And there's, on the 17th hole, there's an elevation, and at the top of this elevation, this ridge, are all the most incredible homes in this entire property. But of all of those homes, there's the one directly above the 17th, which looks like a palace. It's absolutely stunning. And when you're looking from the 17th hole down, so you can imagine from up there, you see the entire island below you and the ocean. It's absolutely breathtaking. It's breathtaking. So here I am on 16th, I say to him, so which one of these is yours? And he turns to me and says, that one. And of course, which one does he point to? That house. And I'm like, so I don't know why, but I said to him in a very cocky fashion, maybe when you're ready to sell it, I'll be ready to buy it. That's what I said to him. Later on, I learned that he turned down $20 million for this house. Turned down. Anyway, without even thinking or blinking an eye, he said something to me that I'll never forget. He said, all that really matters is your health. Why would somebody say that? Like, I said to him, when you're ready to sell it, I'll be ready to buy it. We're talking about his house, but what he's saying is, all that really matters is your health. What did he understand that I didn't understand? Why would he make such a statement? Do you think something happened in his life that helped him understand how important health was and not money, not possessions? So there is a balance between the idea of having a healthy body and having healthy finances. Wouldn't you agree? It's not one or the other. And a lot of people compromise their physical health for money. So this is not a good definition of success. I think we need to teach a new definition of success. I think we need to teach our children what success really is. It's not about what you have. It's not even about what you do. It's about who you're being. Are you being someone who's proactive, active, in a trajectory of life that brings you more health in your finances, in your physical body, in your relationships, in your definitions of success and happiness? So this definition was taught to me by my mentor, who it was taught to him by his mentor, who's named Earl Nightingale. Many of you may have heard this guy, Earl Nightingale, one of the fathers of the personal development movement. And his protege is Bob Proctor, who's a friend of mine. Bob Proctor, you may have heard of his name in the movie The Secret. He's well known before and after. But he said the best definition of success he's ever heard is the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. Success is the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. What did he say? The progressive realization of a worthy ideal. As long as you're progressing toward it, you're moving toward this worthy ideal, every minute of every day, that's a success. So that's an easy thing to measure. I know if I have something that's not good for me to eat, or I know if I haven't taken care of my body with hydrating my body with water today, I know that that was not a good day. But I can change that. I can get back on that track. So by having that definition, it allows us to make corrections in our choices on a daily basis. And it's those choices that we make on a daily basis that lead to our habits, our conditioning, and our results. One day, I was at a buffet. And when I went up to the buffet, it occurred to me, for the first time in all my life, it occurred to me what I was doing. I was scanning the buffet. You know what I was looking for? Anything green. It never was like that before. How do you approach a buffet? Where do you start? Dessert? Or do you go straight for the meat? Or, you know what I mean? And I found myself specifically looking, going through the buffet, looking for what was green. And it was like, that's really weird. I'm looking for stuff that's green. So from that, I taught my children when they were very young that your body's favorite color is?
Green.
Green. And that's how I got them to drink the Jade Greenzymes from Nikken. But now they know health and they understand health. But what was interesting was that my behavior changed. And I didn't even know it. I was making choices that automatically caused my mind to shift the way it thought. Now, do you think it's possible to do that with money? It's possible to do it with health. Is it possible to do that with money? You bet it is. This concept of compounding works with money as well, and it works really well with money. So that's where Nikken really comes in. If you're looking for a solution to create a lifestyle that leads to freedom of choice. I'm going to tell you again what this guy said. He wasn't impressed with the idea that I had money or could even want that house. He was impressed with health, but the idea of being healthy. And I'll tell you, the freedom of being able to be on that golf course and play with that guy was priceless too, to get that information. The freedom of choice, the freedom of time is the greatest possession any human being can have. Think about this for a second. How many of you like to be told what you're going to eat? Or would you rather have a menu that you can choose what you would like to eat? Which feels better? Having the freedom of choice. And so, we're going to suggest that maybe Nikken become one of those choices for you. We're not going to tell you to do it. We're just going to suggest that to you. For all the right reasons. Because everyone deserves healthy life. A healthy life in balance. Which of these things is the most important thing to you? Now, if you answer this question honestly, you'll find, like I found, they're all important. There's not really one more important. And yet, if I went down outside right now the hotel, and I asked each car that passed by to lower the window and I asked them a question, I said, and the question I asked them is, of these 5 pillars, which is the one that causes you the greatest degree of stress? Which one would they point to? Finances. So if you're going to really be involved in the wellness movement, in the health movement, you've got to deal with the #1 cause of stress. Because stress is what's killing us. And the #1 cause of stress is finance. So living a life in balance is really about getting your life organized and that trajectory toward health in all 5 pillars. Now, I just mentioned stress. Does it matter where you get your stress? Whatever is the cause of your stress. Stress is stress. And stress compounds. And eventually it leads to dis-ease. In the mind, in the body, in our relationships, in our ability to function, in our choices. How many people in this room can easily walk up the stairs instead of take the elevator? Quite a few of you. How many of you would have to struggle a little bit? Be honest. Okay? I'll tell you something. I've been in meeting rooms where the people have to come in with a scooter because they can't even carry their body. That's the trajectory of life in many places around the world. They're being led into a scooter. That's how crazy it is. So, by the way, this is a big issue. Obesity, not so bad in Mexico. I've noticed it's not so bad here. It is?
Yes.
Okay, well if you think this is bad, I invite you to the United States of America. And then you'll see what you're comparing yourself to. But boy, oh boy, it's something. I have friends and family that visit the U.S. I'm from Canada. And to some degree we have this issue in Canada, but not like they do there. In Canada we have a healthcare system that's socialized. We pay taxes. Our taxes allow people to go to the hospital without having to pay. Right? In the States, they have a private healthcare system, which means there's profit to be made if you're sick. So let's just keep pounding these people with garbage and crap in their food, and that way they'll get bigger and sicker, and we can just feed them more of the medicines that we have. And that is really the psychology. So the point being, how about this? How many of you have freedom of time? How many of you, your biggest complaint is time. Oh, I gotta go. I don't have any time. How many people you know like that? Think of the people you know right now that are feeling stress. You're here today enjoying a nice morning, some information, but where are they right now? What are they doing? What's the pressure they're under? What options do they have? So whether it's lack of money, not enough money in the house, whether it's rising costs to take care of the health of your family, yourself, whether it's debt, that's something that people have become accustomed to, growing debt. Well, let me pay with a credit card. Let me pay with borrowed money. I'll pay it later. And this becomes too big to handle for a lot of people. And that becomes a huge source of stress. In my lifetime, I've never seen the cost of living go down. Have you? The cost of living is always going up. Does your income go up in proportion to the cost of living? for most people, the gap continues to widen between the money they're making and what it costs to live. So think about this. 10 years from now, what's it going to look like? What about for your kids? In America, in North America, there's a huge debt, a rising cost of education. And so most of these kids graduate from university with a huge amount of debt. They don't even get to start from zero. They're already in the basement before they start. It takes them years and years to pay off their debt. Forget about putting a down payment on a home. And now more and more and more condominiums are rising in the city because nobody can afford to buy anything. They can only rent something. And even then, the rent is very high. That is the trajectory that we're on. Cost of living is going up. There's people losing their jobs. Technology is replacing jobs. And, there's a lot of people who think that some of those jobs can come back. No, they can't. Efficiency is what drives the economy, and when something is more efficient, then that job is obsolete. How many of you still go around on horses? So if you were in the buggy whip business, if you made buggy whips, you'd have been out of business a long time ago, right? So we've got to recognize that in order to maintain employment, we have to find out where the employment is going. Education expenses, I mentioned. Retirement. Now, I'm not one who likes the idea of retirement. I never really liked the idea of retirement. I don't think anybody should ever retire. I think retiring is something you do from something you don't want to do. And if you find something that you love to do, why would you retire? Just keep doing it because you love it. So if you could find work or a vocation or something that is so enjoyable that you love it when you do it, then you're not going to retire. But for those people who don't have that going for them, and they're getting too old to continue working the way they've been working, and most companies out there are looking for young people, not old people, where do they go? So retirement savings get dwindled, and most people cannot afford to retire, even though physically maybe they have to. Taxes. Is that a problem here? You pay taxes? Ah, shucks. What do they say? There's only two things that are certain in life: death and taxes. Okay, so if you got some tax issues, there's another stress. That's a big stress. Well, I have good news, not just bad news today. The good news is there is a change happening, a very, very big change that's happening right now in the world. That's affecting every one of us. Whether you know it or not, you're being affected by it. Now, what happens when there's a change in the world? If you get on the right side of that change, you can profit. You can prosper. If you wait too long, you miss the opportunity to prosper. So there are the providers, the solution providers, and then there are the consumers of a change. Now, let me talk about this concept called the gig economy. How many of you have heard of this thing called the gig economy? Now, where the term came from, it's kind of like musicians. There's a lot of part-time musicians. They have their job in the day, and then on Friday night, they go to the club that they're contracted and they have their gig. They do their gig. And where do they have the most fun? In their job or in their gig? In their gig. So the idea of a gig is something you really like to do, but it's something you do on the side. It's not necessarily the main thing, it's the thing you do on the side. So more and more people are finding things to do on the side that gives them greater pleasure, that gives them a sense of connection and purpose away from the job that they have to make the money and the stress and all that. They're looking for outlets, ways of making money, but doing it in a way that is enjoyable and flexible. That's the gig economy. And it's exploding. It is exploding. Now, I'll give you an example of that. How many of you have heard of a company called Uber? Uber is a classic example of a gig economy solution. Now, Uber is the largest taxi company in the world, and they don't even own a single taxi cab. Now that should shock you. That should cause you to think, wait a minute. That's how different the new economy is. The new economy is different than the old economy. The old economy, you have to have taxis. You'd have to have people to drive those taxis and pay them. You'd have to have warehouses and parking lots and things to keep those taxis, and you'd have to have an infrastructure to support that. Here is the largest taxi company in the world internationally, and they don't own a single taxi. Somebody figured out something. They changed the way we do things. And the new economy is all about that. There's such a significant change taking place in the way businesses are now organizing themselves. They don't look like the businesses I grew up knowing. I'll give you an example. Another one. Here's Airbnb. How many of you have heard of Airbnb? Again, the largest provider of accommodations for people traveling, but they don't even own a single hotel room. And they're bigger than any hotel chain in the world. And that happened like in the last 5 years, 10 years. Wow! Do you think if you could participate in some of these companies, you'd have a nice future ahead of you? So the economy is changing in such a way that it's almost unrecognizable. Who do you have to be to see that coming? A magician? Who would have thought that the largest taxi company in the world would have no taxis? Here's an example of that. In February 2011, 6 years ago, General Motors, a $54 billion company, Uber, a $60 million company. Fast forward 5 to 6 years, General Motors, not much bigger. Look at Uber, $68 billion. Wow. General Motors is a big operation. They have plants and facilities and employees and equipment. And what does Uber have? An app on a phone. That's insane. And yet that's the new economy. That's the new reality. So if you want to have a future, you need to pay attention to how you can participate in the new economy. You want to make sure your kids understand there's a new economy and help them move in that direction. Here's another example. How many of you have heard of Walmart? You know of Walmart here? Do you know of Amazon here? Okay, look at this. 5 years ago, Amazon, $83 billion. That's not small. That's a big operation. Walmart, $212 billion with their places all over. 5 years later, Amazon is almost twice the size of Walmart. Amazon is going to own retail. And where do you go to buy when you go to Walmart? You get in your car, you drive across town, you go to one of their facilities, and you buy. And then you put your stuff in your car and you drive home, and that's your process for getting something from Walmart. What's your process for getting something from Amazon? Where do you buy? You could be sitting on the toilet buying. That's how incredible that operation is. They've made it so efficient that it makes it almost impossible for people not to want to buy that way. And that's why it's shifted the focus away from traditional retail outlets to virtual retail outlets. So if your business doesn't involve that economy, the e-commerce economy, you're out of business in a matter of time. No time at all. So you've got to have that kind of thing going on in your life. So these are simple examples of reality that's actually happening. So if you wanted a business, if you wanted to move into a business, by the way, these are places where you shop for an item that you know you want to buy. Where do you shop for an item that you don't even know exists? Well, the answer is simple. If you don't know it exists, you don't shop for it. So how did you learn about a product that you don't know about and never shopped for from others? There's still this sweet spot in the economy where a new product or a new service requires people to talk about it for it to get popular. And until it's popular, you'll never see it sold at Walmart or Amazon. Because they can't afford to keep stuff that nobody knows about. They can only sell stuff that people know about. So if you really wanted to piggyback on this, you'd want to get in a business and not compete with these guys. But you want to take advantage of their system. You want to have a system that works like theirs, but you don't want to compete with them by having the same type of products that they have. You want to have products that people don't know about, because that's still an opportunity to introduce something new to the market. That would be the sweet spot. So, who's getting involved in the new economy? Who are the people getting involved? Why are they getting involved? Well, it's a lot of people sitting at their desk, in their home, on a laptop, and so forth. The new economy is no longer about how you look, well, how old you are, what is your education. It's not about that. It's just how effective are you at tapping in to what's going on in the e-commerce market, in marketing and promotion of new technologies and services. It's no longer about having a job. So people who are getting involved in the new economy, the gig economy, are looking for freedom and flexibility. They're looking like that Uber driver. That Uber driver decides what time of the day they're going to start and what time they're going to finish. And they can decide to change their mind halfway in between because it's their time. So they get in their car, they turn on their app, and they're in business. And then they turn it off when they don't want to be in business, and they turn it on when they want to be in business. Any time of day or night. That's freedom. That's flexibility. That's the gig economy. And that's what drives people in this new economy. They want that level. They don't want a job. They're happy to have one because it pays the bills. But if they want freedom and flexibility, they want something that offers that. But here's an interesting thing about the gig economy, the Uber driver. If you're an Uber driver, you have to have a phone, which means you have to have a phone plan. You have to have a car, or you have to have access to a car, which is costing you money. You have to put gas in that car, or you can't drive it. So even, you have to insure that car. So even before you leave the house, you're spending $500 to $1,000 just to be an Uber driver before you took any fare. So if you're going to be involved in some type of a business, expect there to be a cost of doing business. Is that not reasonable? But that's very small a cost compared to what it takes typically to have a business. Most businesses cost a lot of money to start and to keep going. How many of you know that? How many of you are involved in a business and it's like, boy, if I had to pay $500 a month, I'd gladly do it. Yeah, some businesses are so expensive just to start and then to keep them going that becomes a stress by itself. And that is not what the gig economy is about. It's about stress-free income. So this is becoming very, very popular. And it's going to continue to be popular. And guess who's getting involved in the gig economy? The aging baby boomers who can't find work elsewhere, or are sick and tired of the work they're doing. The younger generation, the millennials, who see their parents and say, I don't want to do what they've been doing all their life. No, thank you. They want choices. They want options. They want freedom. They're not looking for a job. They're not looking for a pension. They're not looking for loyalty. They just want the money when they need it, to do whatever they want. They want to be able to do whatever they want whenever they want. Wow. These guys want a lot, don't they? But they can have it. Why not when you can have it? Because they can have it. They're open in their mind and flexible enough to recognize what's happening, and they're participating. the rest of us are standing back saying, what's going on? I don't understand any of this. What's going on? It's time to recognize and get involved.